Dear students, today I am going to explain Bretton Woods system and IMF. As we have already discussed in the class that how gold standard failed under the international monetary system, especially after the Second World War. So now we'll be continuing with the second part of international monetary system, that is Bretton Woods system. A huge destruction was caused to the economies after the Second World War, and it was the need of the hour to revive the economies, to make them parallel or equivalent to what they were earlier. So gold standards proved ineffective. So economies came out of the gold standard, and an international body called International Monetary Fund or IMF evolved as a result of meeting held in Bretton Woods in America. That is why it is called as Bretton Woods system. IMF commenced its operation from the year 1947. Now, talking about the objectives of IMF, the very first objective was to promote international monetary cooperation through a permanent institution. Keep this thing in mind. Here I am stressing on the word international monetary cooperation. That means cooperation between the economies, because here the word is international. So it is not between one or two countries, it is international, it is global. Monetary cooperation, here the word is monetary in terms of money. So we have come out of the gold standard through a permanent institution. This institution was established as a mediator between all the countries which were the participating countries in IMF. The second objective was the development of productive resources of all members as primary objective of economic policy. As I said earlier, at that time it was required to revive the economies, but at the same time it was equally important to develop all the productive resources of all the member countries. Then third objective was to promote exchange stability, that is to avoid undue fluctuations in the exchange rate of different countries, and then to give confidence to members by making the general resources of the fund temporarily available to them under adequate safeguards. So keep this thing in mind that IMF is an institution which makes the funds available to the member countries. That was the very purpose of the establishment of IMF, that it can correct disequilibrium. Coming to the next part, it is explained in that also, that is to shorten the duration and lessen the degree of disequilibrium in the international balance of payment of the members. So how it could be done? That is by providing general resources available to the member countries. Now the exchange rate under Bretton Woods system. The system was based on a stable and adjustable exchange rate. The exchange rate was a pegged exchange rate. Now what is this? Pegged exchange rate is a type of exchange rate in which a currency's value is fixed against either the value of another country's currency or another measure of value such as gold. So explaining this in very simple terms, I can say that under pegged exchange rate system, the value of a currency is fixed against, there are two parameters, either it is tied in terms of some other currency or it is tied against some measure of value such as gold. So in case of Bretton Woods system also, the value of the currency was based on pegged exchange rate system. Under this system, the value of the participating country's currency was fixed in terms of dollar, that which I explained. The another measure of value is the gold. या तो उनकी currencies की value जो थी, it was determined in terms of gold या in terms of US dollar. So each participating country was required to contribute to the pool of IMF, and this fixed value was known as par value. Right, and in case there was any disequilibrium in this par value, this was to be corrected, और उसके लिए एक criteria भी fix किया गया. And what was that criteria? That in case there is any disequilibrium up to 5%, it could be corrected without prior approval of IMF. That means countries के पास लिबर्टी थी, पावर थी कि इस पार वैल्यू से अगर किसी भी तरह की अप टू 5% की डेविएशंस होती है तो उसमें किसी तरह की IMF की इंटरफेरेंस की ज़रूरत नहीं है. बट इफ़ द डिसइक्विलिब्रियम गोज बियॉन्ड 5%, 5% ऑफ व्हाट, 5% ऑफ द पावर वैल्यू, देन इट कुड बी करेक्टेड विथ प्रायर अप्रूवल ऑफ IMF. सो उसके लिए आपको अप्रूवल की ज़रूरत होगी. Talking about the financial structure of IMF. Capital of the resource or the resources of fund come from two sources, subscription और quota, and second is the borrowing. जैसे मैंने आपको बोला कि हर country ने अपनी एक par value fix की हुई थी. In what terms? In terms of dollar or in terms of gold. तो यही जो था, this was the financial structure of IMF. Each member country was required to subscribe an amount equivalent to its quota. Just like we know that in case of any country there are central banks, and each commercial bank is required to contribute a certain percentage to, is required to give some certain percentage to central bank. Just like this only, all the participating countries were required to contribute to the pool of IMF, and uske liye bhi criteria was fixed. It is the quota on which payment obligations, credit facilities and voting right of members are determined. आई मीन जितना आप उस कोटा में कंट्रीब्यूट करेंगे उसी के अकॉर्डिंग आपको जो क्रेडिट फैसिलिटी है या वोटिंग राइट्स है या और भी जो कोई फैसिलिटीज़ है वो उसी के अकॉर्डिंग मिलेंगी. As soon as the country joins the fund, it is assigned a quota which is expressed in special drawing rights. जो countries में if you are contributing, the way you are contributing, the quota that you are contributing, that is called as your special drawing rights. At the time of formation each of IMF, the quota of each member was made up of 25% in gold or a currency convertible in gold, that is dollar. The remaining 75% of subscription was in member countries own currency. तो 25% के लिए countries के पास they had the option, they could contribute either in terms of gold or as I said in terms of dollar. So dollar was the dominating currency. बोरिंग लिमिट्स, सेकेंड कमिंग टू द सेकेंड पार्ट, बोरिंग लिमिट्स. दो तरह की लिमिट्स थी कंट्रीज़ के पास. वन वॉज बेसिक फैसिलिटी, इट वॉज गोल्ड ट्रेंच जो कि हमने कहा कि इट इज़ 25% एंड प्लस 4 क्रेडिट ट्रेंच. दैट मीन्स ऑल इन ऑल 125% तक की जो बेसिक फैसिलिटी थी बोरिंग की थी. 125%, हाउ वी कैलकुलेटेड इट, गोल्ड ट्रेंच ऑफ 25% एंड प्लस 4 क्रेडिट ट्रेंच. So 4 becomes 100, 100 plus 25 is 125. And in extended facility, that is 140%. 140% means 100% is what you have contributed and 40% is above that. However, जब ये ब्रेटन वुड सिस्टम स्टार्ट किया गया, देन एज आई एक्सप्लेन द पर्पस वॉज टू करेक्ट द डिसइक्विलिब्रियम ऑफ द कंट्रीज एंड टू कम आउट ऑफ द गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड्स, टू मेक द रिवाइव द इकोनॉमीज. बहुत सारे ये पर्पस थे. बट बाय द एंड ऑफ टाइम इट वॉज रियलाइज्ड दैट ब्रेटन वुड सिस्टम कुड नॉट अचीव इट्स ऑब्जेक्टिव्स. व्हाट वॉज द रीज़न? द रीज़न वॉज दैट देयर वर सर्टन वीकनेसेस ऑफ द ब्रेटन वुड सिस्टम. लेट्स जस्ट डिस्कस दोज वीकनेसेस. It was criticized that Bretton Woods system simply replaced the gold exchange standard to dollar exchange standard, because हमने देखा every country was required to contribute to the pool either in terms of gold or in terms of dollar. तो हुआ क्या, that dollar was becoming a dominating country. The US dollar was the only currency convertible in gold, so US had the highest quota in IMF and dollar became the principal reserve currency. And what effect did it have? That this gave America the role of world money manager and US used it to promote its own interest and priorities. तो इसकी वजह से हुआ क्या कि गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड से निकल के they came to the ब्रेटन वुड सिस्टम, डॉलर में आ गए. एंड अमेरिका एट द सेम टाइम, दूसरा इसका फ़ायदा ये हुआ दैट अमेरिका गॉट द प्रिविलेज ऑफ फाइनेंसिंग इट्स डेफिसिट विद इट्स ओन करेंसी, बिकॉज एवरी कंट्री वॉज कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ गोल्ड. सो America got the privilege that it could finance its deficit with its own currency, right? So this gave America the freedom from external payments constraint and allowed it to issue the world's reserve currency in accordance with own priorities. So it was becoming America was becoming the major part. So we can say that it was just a replacement of gold standard. Second thing is that it did not, although it was meant to correct disequilibrium, but it did not deal with fundamental disequilibrium. Fundamental disequilibrium, if we define it in simple terms, it is a situation under a fixed exchange system where a country is in a position of persistent is long-term balance of payment deficit or surplus at a fixed rate against other countries. तो ये disequilibrium simply stated it is a long-term or persistent disequilibrium in its disequilibrium between the inflow and outflow of funds. So, the system failed to define the term fundamental disequilibrium. Thus, by the time fundamental disequilibrium would set, the country's economic system would already have gone major losses. मतलब जब तक आपको ये पता चले, because fundamental disequilibrium पे no stress was given, तो by the time you realize that you are going to fundamental disequilibrium, you have already crossed various stages of fundamental disequilibrium. Second, next is role of IMF in providing international liquidity was not successful. Although it was meant to correct the disequilibrium, but this role could not be achieved. So ultimately, what happened? There was a collapse of Bretton Woods system. Let me just explain this also. The first decade and a half since its inception saw a period of dollar shortage, since US alone could prevent a rush for gold by promoting dollar outflow. जैसा हमने कहा कि दो ऑप्शंस थे, या तो आप डॉलर में कर सकते हैं या फिर आप इन टर्म्स ऑफ गोल्ड कर सकते हैं. और उस टाइम पे व्हाट वाज द नीड वाज टू कम आउट ऑफ द गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड. तो ये प्रमोट किया जा रहा था कि जो कंट्रीज हैं वो जो अपना कंट्रीब्यूशन दें वो दें इन टर्म्स ऑफ डॉलर. सो अल्टीमेटली इसका क्या इफेक्ट हुआ कि कंट्रीज जो थी वो डॉलर की डिमांड करने लग गई. ड्यू टू दिस डिमांड देयर वाज इनफैक्ट फिर फाइनली क्या हुआ, देयर वाज शॉर्टेज ऑफ डॉलर इन यूएस, बिकॉज यूएस क्या कर रहा था, अपने डॉलर दे रहा था IMF के जो कोटा है उसमें कंट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए. सो दिस रिजल्टेड इन यूएस हैविंग अ परसिस्टेंट डॉलर डेफिशिएंट. एक्सप्लेन्ड परसिस्टेंट, व्हाट इज परसिस्टेंट, लॉन्ग टर्म, कंटिन्यूसली काफ़ी ज़्यादा वहाँ पर डॉलर डेफिशिएट हो रहा था. So what happened that after 1958 these dollar deficit became more huge and what followed was a period of dollar downfall. डॉलर बहुत ज़्यादा नीचे चला गया. This made the major European countries avoid dollar reserve, thus reducing confidence level in dollar, because dollar काफ़ी ज़्यादा नीचे चला गया. It leads to a dilemma known as Triffin's dilemma. तो ये ट्रिफिन डायलेमा क्या होता है? इट इज़ अ डायलेमा बिटवीन शॉर्ट टर्म डोमेस्टिक गोल एंड लॉन्ग टर्म इंटरनेशनल गोल. व्हाट वाज द शॉर्ट टर्म डोमेस्टिक गोल? द शॉर्ट टर्म डोमेस्टिक गोल वाज टू स्टेबलाइज डॉलर, की डॉलर की जो वैल्यू है वो बढ़ सके, ये शॉर्ट टर्म गोल था. एंड व्हाट वाज इंटरनेशनल गोल? इंटरनेशनल गोल ये था कि बाकी कंट्रीज डॉलर के टर्म्स में उस कोटा में कंट्रीब्यूट करें. तो डायलेमा इज अ सिचुएशन व्हेन यू आर नॉट एबल टू डिसाइड बिटवीन टू ऑप्शंस. तो ये समझ नहीं आ रहा था कि यूएस की पोजीशन को ठीक किया जाए या फिर जो बाकी कंट्रीज कंट्रीब्यूट कर रही हैं वो उसमें डॉलर के टर्म्स में कंट्रीब्यूट करें. तो ये इससे क्या हो रहा था कि सिचुएशन और ज़्यादा वर्सन हो रही थी. So the US deficit was expected to reduce to restore to the confidence in dollar. मतलब ये हर हाल में चाहिए था कि डॉलर का जो डेफिसिट है it must reduce so that people can have confidence in dollar and to avoid speculation against dollar. However, if US deficit were reduced, then the international liquidity stood reduced. So this is what is Triffin's dilemma. I'll explain this again. I'm just repeating it. If US deficit were reduced, then the international liquidity stood reduced. तो ये हो गया डायलेमा बिटवीन शॉर्ट टर्म डोमेस्टिक गोल. डोमेस्टिक गोल क्या है? यूएस डेफिसिट को रिड्यूस करना. एंड लॉन्ग टर्म इंटरनेशनल गोल, व्हाट इज लॉन्ग टर्म इंटरनेशनल गोल? टू restore international liquidity. So this was the first strain on the Bretton Woods system. The second part or the second reason of the collapse of Bretton Woods system was non-support from other countries, because to correct this deficit which I explained in the first point, US expected that other countries like Europe and Japan to either inflate or revalue its currencies ताकि जो डॉलर की वैल्यू है वो रिस्टोर हो सके. However, the countries felt that since US had the world's largest deficit, so it should be the first one to take corrective steps. They felt that America alone had the privilege of liability financing, so they did not support America, and ultimately Bretton Woods system collapsed. If you want to have a gist of this Bretton Woods system, we can call it a changed role of IMF. IMF two phases में जो है अपने operations किए इसने. There are two phases in the working of IMF. The first phase is called the Bretton Woods system, which I explained here. The IMF system or the Bretton Woods system provides for exchange rate stability in the short run, but allowed for the possibility of exchange rate system when a country experienced fundamental disequilibrium in its balance of payment accounts. Thus, the pegged exchange rate was adjusted in accordance with the IMF. So, it was named as adjustable peg system. But however, eventually it failed as it could not achieve its objective. As the system was the source of major problems, it was abandoned in 1971 and more flexibility was introduced in the monetary system. So, the demise of Bretton Woods system made room for the floating exchange rate regime, which we are actually following these days, requiring change in the role of IMF. So, this was all about Bretton Woods system and the role of IMF under international monetary system. The next part we will be covering under international monetary system is the Smithsonian Agreement.